Here now, the President. Jake, thank you so much.
As you know, I just concluded several hours of meetings with President Xi, and I believe they were some of the most constructive and productive discussions we've had. I've been meeting with President Xi since both of us were vice president over 10 years ago. Our meetings have always been candid and straightforward. We haven't always agreed, but they've been straightforward. And today, build on the groundwork we laid over the past several months of high-level diplomacy between our teams. We've made some important progress, I believe. First, I'm pleased to announce that after many years of being on hold, we are restarting cooperation between the United States and PRC on counter-narcotics. In 2019, you may remember, China took action to greatly reduce the amount of fentanyl shipped directly from China to the United States. But in the years since that time, the challenge has evolved from finished fentanyl to fentanyl chemical ingredients and pill presses, which are being shipped without control. And by the way, some of these pills are being inserted in other drugs like cocaine. A lot of people are dying. More people in the United States between the ages of 18 and 49 die from fentanyl than from guns, car accidents, or any other cause, period. So today, with this new understanding, we're taking action to significantly reduce the flow of precursor chemicals and pill presses from China to the Western Hemisphere. It's going to save lives, and I appreciate President Xi's commitment on this issue. President Xi and I tasked our teams to maintain a policy and law enforcement coordination going forward to make sure it works. I also want to thank the bipartisan congressional delegation to China, led by Leader Schumer, in October for supporting this effort so strongly. Secondly, and this is critically important, we're reassuming military-to-military contacts, direct contacts. As a lot of you press know who follow this, that's been cut off, and it's been very worrisome. That's how accidents happen, misunderstandings. So we're back to direct, open, clear, direct communications on a direct basis. Vital miscalculations on either side can cause real trouble with a country like China or any other major country. And so I think we're made real progress there as well. And thirdly, we're going to get our experts together to discuss risk and safety issues associated with artificial intelligence. As many of you who travel with me around the world, almost everywhere I go, every major leader wants to talk about the impact of artificial intelligence. These are tangible steps in the right direction to determine what's useful and what's not useful, what's dangerous and what's acceptable. Moreover, there are evidence of cases that I've made all along. The United States will continue to compete vigorously with the PRC, but we'll manage that competition responsibly so it doesn't veer into conflict or accidental conflict. And where it's possible, where our interests coincide, we're going to work together like we did on fentanyl. That's what the world expects of us. The rest of the world expects, not just in people in China and the United States, but the rest of the world expects that of us. And that's what the United States is going to be doing. Today, President Xi and I also exchanged views on a range of regional and global issues, including Russia's refusal and brutal war to stop the war and brutal war of aggression against Ukraine and conflict in Gaza. And as I always do, I raised areas where the United States has concerns about the PRC's actions, including detained and exit-banned U.S. citizens, human rights, and coercive activities in the South China Sea. We discussed all three of those things. I gave them names of individuals that we think are being held, and hopefully we can get them released as well. No agreement on that. No agreement on that. I also stressed the importance of peace and stability in the Taiwan Straits. It's clear that we object to Beijing's non-market economic practices and disadvantage American businesses and workers, and that we'll continue to address them. And I named what I thought a number of those were. I welcome the positive steps we've taken today. And it's important for the world to see that we're implementing the approach in the best traditions of American diplomacy. We're talking to our competitors, and the key, and just talking, just being blunt with one another, so there's no misunderstanding, as a key element to maintaining global stability and delivering for the American people. And in the months ahead, we're going to continue to preserve and pursue high-level diplomacy at the PRC in both directions to keep the lines of communication open, including between President Xi and me. He and I agreed that each one of us could pick up the phone, call directly, and would be heard immediately. And that's, now I'd like to be able to take some questions, if I may. And I'm told that Dimitri of the Financial Times has the first question.
Thank you. And as an Irishman, I apologize for bringing the rain.
Well, holy God, I wouldn't have called on you if I'd known that. No, I'm teasing. Go ahead. Fire away, Dimitri.
President Biden, given that America is playing a key role in two major global crises, in Ukraine and in Gaza, does that alter your previous commitment to defend Taiwan from any Chinese military action? And did Xi Jinping outline the conditions under which China would attack Taiwan?
Look, I reiterated what I've said since I've become president, and what every previous president of late has said, that we maintain an agreement that there is a one China policy, and that I'm not going to change that. That's not going to change. And so that's about the extent to which we discussed it. Next question, sorry, was Bloomberg.
It appears, among other issues, that your agreement with President Xi over fentanyl will require a lot of trust and verification to ensure success, curbing those drug flows. I'm wondering, after today, and considering all that you've been through in the past year, would you say, Mr. President, that you trust President Xi? And secondly, if I could, on Taiwan, you and your administration officials have warned President Xi and China about interference in the upcoming elections. I'm wondering, what would the consequences be if they do, in fact, interfere in the elections?
Well, I had that discussion with him, too, made it clear I didn't expect any interference, any at all. And we had that discussion as he was leaving. Look, do I trust? I trust but verify, as that old saying goes. That's where I am. And, we're in a competitive relationship, China and the United States. But my responsibility is to make this rational and manageable, so it doesn't result in conflict. That's what I'm all about. That's what this is about. To find a place where we can come together and where we find mutual interest but most importantly, from my perspective, that are interested in the American people. That's what this is about. And that's exactly what we'll do. We're in a situation where we agreed that fentanyl and its precursors will be curbed substantially, and the pill presses. That's a big movement. They're doing that, and by the way, I guess I shouldn't identify where it occurred, but John, I know two people near where I live. Their kids literally, as that's strange, they woke up dead. Someone had inserted in, whether the young man did or not, inserted in a drug he was taking, fentanyl. Again, I hope you don't have any experience with knowing anyone, but this is the largest killer of people in that age category. And, I guess the other thing I think is most important is that since I've spent more time with President Xi than any world leader has, just because we were vice presidents. His president was President Hu. I'm not making a joke. President Hu and President Obama thought we should get to know one another. It wasn't appropriate for the President of the United States to be dealing with their vice president. So we met, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 68 hours of just face-to-face, just us and a simultaneous interpreter. So I think I know the man. I know his modus operandi. He's been, we have disagreements. He has a different view than I have on a lot of things, but he's been straight. I don't mean that it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's just been straight. And we, as I said, the thing that I find most assuring is he raised, and I fully agree, that either one of us have any concern, Mr. Ambassador, any concern about anything between our nations or happening in our region, we should pick up the phone and call one another, and we'll take the call. That's an important progress. I am embarrassed. I think it's CBS, but I can't remember who is CBS. I'm sorry.
Mr. President, Judge Day.
Sorry. I apologize.
You continue to stress the need to ensure competition with China does not veer into conflict or confrontation. In the past 2 years, there have been 180 incidents of Chinese aggression against U.S. aircraft in the Indo-Pacific, and of course, the ramped up military activity in the South China Sea. If that does not count as veering into confrontation, then what does? And did you issue a warning against that?
Well, first of all, none of it did end up in a conflict, number one. Number two, you may recall I did a few little things like get the Quad together, allow Australia to have access to new submarines, moving in the direction of working with the Philippines. So our actions speak louder than our words. He fully understands.
And because of the news today, sir, I do have a question about the IDF raid on the Al-Shifa hospital, as it tries to contain and take out the Hamas that is there. This week, you also said that we must protect hospitals. So when you weigh the target against the number of civilians inside the hospital, is the operation underway justified?
Well, look, we did discuss this, by the way, but we can't let it get out of control. Here's the situation. You have a circumstance where the first war crime is being committed by Hamas by having their headquarters, their military, hidden under a hospital. And that's a fact. That's what's happened. Israel did not go in with a large number of troops, did not raid, did not rush everything down. They've gone in, and they've gone in with their soldiers carrying weapons, their guns. They were told, let me be precise. We've discussed the need for them to be incredibly careful. You have a circumstance where you know there is a fair number of Hamas terrorists. Hamas has already said publicly that they plan on attacking Israel again, like they did before, to everything cutting babies' heads off to burning women and children alive. And so the idea that they're going to just stop and not do anything is not realistic. This is not the carpet bombing. This is a different thing. They're going through these tunnels. They're going in the hospital. And if you notice, I was mildly preoccupied today. I apologize. I didn't see everything. But what I did see, whether I haven't had it confirmed yet, I am asked my team to answer the question. But what happened is they're also bringing in incubators. We're bringing in other means to help the people in the hospital. And they've given the doctors and, I'm told, the doctors and nurses and the personnel an opportunity to get out of harm's way. So this is a different story than I believe what was occurring before with indiscriminate bombing. What do you got? Washington Post. I think that's right.
Mr. President.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, I couldn't see in the light.
Mr. President, Israel's war in Gaza more than 11,000 Palestinians just for a month and
I'm
created.
sorry, you're breaking up. I didn't. We did.
Israel's war in Gaza has killed more than 11,000 Palestinians in just over a month and created a humanitarian disaster. Israeli officials have said this war could take months or even years. Have you communicated to Prime Minister Netanyahu any sort of deadline or time frame for how long you are willing to support Israel in this operation? Are you comfortable with the operation going on indefinitely, and is there any deal underway to free hostages? Thank you.
Yes, no, working backwards, forward. Look, I have been deeply involved in moving on the hostage negotiation. I don't want to get ahead of myself here because I don't know what's happened in the last 4 hours, but we've gotten great cooperation from the Qataris. I've spoken with them as well a number of times. I think the pause and that the Israelis have agreed to, it's down to, well, I'm getting too much detail. I know, Mr. Secretary, I'm going to stop. But I am mildly hopeful. I'm mildly hopeful. With regard to when is this going to stop, I think it's going to stop when Hamas no longer maintains the capacity to murder and abuse and just do horrific things to the Israelis. And they still think that, at least as of this morning, they still thought they could. I guess the best way for me to say it is that I take a look. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, acknowledges they have an obligation to use as much caution as they can in going after their targets. It's not like they're rushing to the hospital, knocking down doors, and pulling people aside and shooting people indiscriminately. But Hamas, as I said they plan on attacking Israelis again, and this is a terrible dilemma. So what do you do? I think that Israel is also taking risks themselves about their folks being killed and one-to-one going through these hospital rooms, hospital halls. But one thing has been established is that Hamas does have headquarters, weapons, materiel below this hospital, and I suspect others. But how long it's going to last, I don't know. Look, I made it clear to the Israelis that, to Bibi and to his war cabinet, that I think the only ultimate answer here is a two-state solution that's real. We got to get to the point where there is an ability to be able to even talk without worrying about whether or not we're just dealing with, they're dealing with Hamas that's going to engage in the same activities they did over the past, on the 7th. So but I can't tell, I'm not a fortune teller, I can't tell you how long it's going to last. But I can tell you I don't think it ultimately ends until there's a two-state solution. I made it clear to the Israelis I think it's a big mistake for them to think they're going to occupy Gaza and maintain Gaza. I don't think that works. And so I think you're going to see efforts to bring along, well, I shouldn't go into it anymore because that's been things I've been negotiating with Arab countries and others about what the next steps are. But anyway, thank you all very much. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. This ends the press conference.
When Hamas said they plan on doing the same thing again with what they did on the 7th. They're going to go in, they want to slaughter Israelis. They want to do it again. They've said it out loud. They're not kidding about it. They're not backing off. And so I just asked a rhetorical question. I wonder what we would do if that were the case.
On the hostages, though, you said we're coming for you. What do you mean to the American hostages when you said, hang tight, we're coming for you?
What I meant was I'm doing everything in my power to get you out. Coming to help you, to get you out. I don't mean sending military in to get them. Is that what you thought I might mean? No. I was not talking about the military. I was talking about you're on our mind every single day, 5, 6 times a day. I'm working on how I can be helpful in getting the hostages released and have a period of time where there's a pause long enough to let that happen. And there's somewhere between 50 and 100 hostages there, we think.
And sir, one's a 3-year-old American child.
You're darn right it is. That's why I'm not going to stop till we get her.
Can you detail for us what kind of evidence the U.S. has seen that Hamas has a command center under Al-Shifa Hospital?
No, I can't tell you. I won't tell you.
Do you feel absolutely confident based on what you
Yes.
And Mr. President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that you used earlier this year.
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a communist country that's based on a form of government totally different than ours. Anyway, we may
Stop, Mr. President, stop attacking U.S. forces and wiping the war.
And you've been listening to President Biden speak after his meeting with Xi Jinping. He spoke for a little over 20 minutes there. First on the topic A of the day, he said that he and the Chinese leader promised each other that were there any difficulties at all, they'd be able to get each other on the phone. He reiterated that several times as a symbolic and also actual development in terms of improving those relations that have been cold for more than a year. He also said that he warned the Chinese leader that there should be no interference in U.S. elections. He mentioned that was something that came up at the end of their meeting. He reiterated the one China policy on the Taiwan question, saying that there was no deviation in the U.S. position. He has at times appeared to deviate from the U.S. position in some of his remarks about defending Taiwan, but he reiterated the traditional U.S. policy there. He, at the end, also referred to, throughout his remarks, he said that China and the U.S. were had agreed to work on fentanyl and precursor chemicals in stopping the scourge of drug overdoses in America that result from fentanyl. He mentioned that as one of the biggest portions of the discussion and agreements that they had made, in addition to this promise to be in touch with each other and reestablish military conversations. He was then also asked several questions about the situation in Israel. He stressed that Israel was taking extreme care in their effort to look for Hamas inside of Gaza hospitals. He reiterated that Gaza had promised to do the same kind of attack that it carried out on the 10th of October to Israel, and therefore Israel, in his view, was wise not to trust Hamas. He said that the only way that this issue will be resolved, which is to say the conflict going on now, is with a two-state solution, a rather heavy political lift there for him to say that. He stressed that there was, he inched up to suggesting that there might be progress on the question of hostages, but then inched back, chiding himself not to reveal more than he was perhaps ready to. He reiterated U.S. intelligence says that Hamas did have some kind of presence in the hotel, in the hospital where the Israeli forces are carrying out operations in the moment. And I think that pretty much captures most of what the president said, but firmly standing with Israel still and not tailoring his policies in support of that country. We are now going to talk again with Jake Werner, who is very patient. He is the acting director of the East Asia program at the Quincy Institute. Jake, so back on the question of China, what did you make of the president's remarks?
I think the press conference illustrated quite nicely why it is that the United States wants to have a stable relationship with China. There are so many demands on the American leaders right now, Israel, Gaza, foremost among them, but of course, Ukraine, Russia came up, and all of the potential problems that we can get in the global economy as a result of climate change. There are a million problems that the U.S. government is facing right now in the world. And on many of these issues, Chinese interests are well aligned, or they could be potentially supportive of American goals. In contrast to Iran and to Russia, the U.S. and Chinese interests overlap significantly more. And it's important, I think, to recognize that, to understand why Biden wants to have a stable relationship with China, so that because, of course, China is the second most powerful country in the world, could make significantly more trouble for the United States if we find ourselves in a position of permanent hostility than even Russia or Iran could.
You could see the president being extremely careful with his words about questions of Taiwan and basically everything that he was talking about with China, but he was, to the extent that he slipped into his more casual mode, it was to talk about how long he has known Xi Jinping, and talked about that idea of being able to call each other on the phone if anything was amiss. How important do you think that is in terms of the limited goals of where this relationship is right now, which is to try to inch back away from the difficulty they've had?
It is important. It's important to maintain those communications. Having that ability to talk in the event of a crisis is something that the Chinese side has really resisted. They've tended to say that the United States is the one causing the crisis, and the U.S. just wants to push China and push China and push China, and then have this crisis line in order to defuse any problems that come up from that. So the fact that China was willing to agree to that, the fact that China also agreed on fentanyl, the fact that they're talking seriously about the potential dangers that artificial intelligence poses, all of these I think are really positive signs. It still remains the case that there are these deep structural problems in the relationship, though, and sooner or later those are going to have to be addressed as well.
Jake Werner, Acting Director of the East Asia Program at the Quincy Institute. Thank you, Jake. You've been with us for almost the whole hour. We really appreciate your context here and your expertise. Thank you.
Very glad to be on. Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have the latest from our Deborah Pata in Jerusalem about the Israeli raid on Gaza's largest hospital. You're streaming CBS News Primetime.